It's a lovely film. It really was enjoyable, and it was certainly a remarkable life. What brought you guys to the story?
Okay, I'll start with that one. Gary and I have been making documentaries for about 30 years, and the film that we had finished just before this one was about war. It was about conscientious objectors in war. And when we finished that film, I was desperate for good news. So I gave myself a little sabbatical. I spent a month looking for stories, going to Cal, sitting in on classes, reading people's studies, you know, just finding out what was out there. And as soon as I saw Marion's lectures on YouTube, the first lecture, and I never even took anatomy, it was all new to me, I just said, wow, this woman can make me excited about science. She can make everybody excited. So that was how it started.
And I'm going to introduce one more person. We have Minna Kane, our associate producer, who is wandering through the audience right now. I'm pointing at her over here. And for those of you who want to know more about the film than we're going to do right now, she's handing out little cards and pencils. We encourage you to stay in touch with us, and we can tell you more about Marion. And Minna will be helping us to sell DVDs. We are truly small-scale independent filmmakers, proud to be here at the Albany Film Festival. So selling DVDs is actually how we make films like this. So there'll be chances for you to buy them here. Normally, they're actually not for sale for consumers yet because our distributors are focusing on educational institutions. So this is an opportunity for those who want their own copies. Minna will be helping with that. So I just wanted to introduce that and say that.
So has anyone raised their hand or has a question they'd like to ask?
Back in the
Hard
theater?
to see what's going on out in the audience with this very bright light in our eyes.
How did you decide, or how did you come to the the organization of the film and how you wanted to frame everything?
We took a long time to make this film. As independent filmmakers, we sort of had, two big choices. Total failure or a film so great that people would want to see it, because no one was institutionally supporting it and no one promised to broadcast it. So it took a long time to find the structure, and at first, we just followed what Dr. Diamond suggested. The wonderfulness of working with her, I think, permeates every frame, but her philosophy of life made filming with her a delight. So because she believes in challenge and newness, I said to her, actually, in this audience, many of you might know the house I'm referring to. There's a marvelous house right on Arlington that does beautiful LED Christmas lights. I said, Marion, I have a new camera. We're going to have a slow shutter speed, and it'll be beautiful and glowy, and you'll walk through the lights. Let's just meet there tonight, and we'll go for a walk through Christmas lights. And she says, well, I've never done that before. Okay. So the structure started out just being totally random, following her lead. And then we realized it was taking us so long to get it done. We thought, oh, am I going to spend years in the cutting room and no one will see it? So then we started to make little web pieces, because the web is what's happening now. And we thought, well, we'll launch it as a web series. So it started as all these little pieces. And to my great surprise, we weren't able to get funding for that. And we said, okay, so what do we know how to do? We know how to make television programs. We'll put all the web pieces together, and it'll turn into a film. And then that was still not very good. So we had dozens of works in progress screenings. And one of the most important ones was at Berkeley High, where 300 9th, 10th, and 11th graders told us how to make the film. I remember very specifically the kid in the front row just saying, the green in the subtitles is horrible. I've got to change that. And the kid in the back who said, start with a joke. And another kid said, and warn us, it's so gross when the brain comes out. So I'm like, okay, change the color. Start with a joke and a warning. And as you saw, the film begins with a joke and a warning. Warning, the human body can be messy. So we discovered the structure in following the story, and I take all blame and no credit.
Okay.
Actually, I have a question. Is there anyone here who studied with Marion?
Hands up. Those who
I see one. I'm sort of blinded, too. I'd love to hear what you have to share.
That was a
mistake, but I guess this will contribute to a more rich environment. I took anatomy from her. I was a physiologist at Berkeley, or in the physiology program, and I was the only, I took a couple anatomy classes. It was a very dynamic teacher. I didn't know that much about her research. I was probably, this is 1968, 69, 70. I probably represented the male chauvinist pig attitude towards all that. But she was a very good and dynamic, and she made anatomy, insufferable memorization that's associated. It made it actually very enjoyable. That was my recollection.
All right, thank you.
All right, don't be shy. If there's anyone else that has a...
Well, I'll
in the
share
back
another,
here.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Speak right.
Hello. Well, one, just a comment. I loved, one, how you captured the brain, but also Dr. Diamond, and I guess it's a two-pronged question. Like, how is it like going into the film and then finishing it, like your thoughts specifically on the brain, and also like how did Dr. Diamond and like the impression and the dynamic person that she is make on you in Females in Science?
There's so much to say about that. I think that she changed my life. I think that she's one of the best friends I've ever had. The years that we worked with her were profoundly meaningful, and it's something that I knew nothing about. I feel honored to know her. I think the fact that she's this amazing role model that was underappreciated, and we were able to help bring that back to the world is super meaningful. I feel especially blessed that as she was growing older and having her own aging issues and wondering, did people care about her research and what she did, that we got to represent that millions of people did care, and that she watched the film dozens and dozens of times. So it began with her changing me, and it ended up with us being the embodiment of other people caring and changing for her. So, very powerful personal experience for me. Thank you for that question.
So I'll fill in here for a question quickly. You mentioned that nobody had, you couldn't find anybody that was going to broadcast this initially. Is this still true? I find that hard to believe.
No. Ultimately, the film was broadcast on PBS last March. Around most of the country, not all PBS channels, but most of the country, including KQED, and then they broadcast it again last December. So it has had television broadcast, but it didn't get the kind of placement that we wanted on TV. This was, we wanted it to be on American Masters because Marion is an American Master. But American Masters said, we don't do science. So we went to Nova, who does science, and Nova says, we don't do biographies. So this film fell between the cracks. So what it means when you're on PBS and you're not in one of those national strands is that it's hard for people to find it. You've got a zillion channels, and good luck finding the PBS channel that has it.
It sounds like independent lens would be the category they would.
She doesn't like science. What can I say? It's America.
Okay.
I'm curious, where is Marion at present day?
Well, Marion passed away last July. Yes, she was 90 years old, and she had a very, very good life. And we were with her at the very end, and I get to share with you her last great teacher's pronouncement to us. She had been pretty quiet for a little while, a few days, and she suddenly just popped out with, if you're going to do life, you've got to be all in. That was it. Yeah.
What I'd also like to share with you all, and this is the delight of a film festival, is we get to hang out with you all as film lovers and as filmmakers. But all my life I've read about famous last words that people said. And here's a moment where Kathy was actually there to receive someone's famous last words. And Marion has a gift for phrases. And now we sign our emails, all in, comma, Gary. But, you know, I sort of feel like the worm's eye view of history. It's, wow, that's how it happens. Somebody's there at the time and tells it as a story to someone else, and they say, that was their last words. We have to remember it.
Got a question over here.
Oh.
Oh, okay, you first.
Hi, I'd be curious to know if her enrichment project in Cambodia is still going on, and also if it has been replicated in other places in the world.
As far as I know, it is still going on. It's sort of self-generated at this point. Kids are still getting education and moving through with the help of the students ahead of them. I don't know to what extent it's going at this point, because Marion was the philanthropist of that. I haven't heard of this being done. I hope it is, but don't know.
But I think it's fair to say there's an informal answer, which is that the essential truth that enrichment increases the brain is present in almost every daycare system in the world now. I mean, any parent in this room can validate what I'm saying. You're choosing daycare and preschool, and it's like, enrichment programs for kids. So this is popular culture. So whether it's been scientifically validated in a particular way that followed up the studies, I feel sure that it has. But beyond that, it's changed how we raise our children.
Okay, up here.
Hi, I'm a student filmmaker myself, and I usually make narrative films, and now I am just, for the first time, trying to tackle my first documentary, and it's seeming to be very difficult, very different from narratives, and I had a question, if you had any tips for someone who's trying to make their first documentary. Did you have any tips for, you know, say, pre-production, production, and maybe post?
Yeah, as a matter of fact. First, I'll quote Dr. Diamond. From the greatest commitments come the greatest rewards. So the most difficult task you face, if you're able to get through it, that's the greatest reward. So view challenges as opportunities to exercise your excellence muscle and see if you can get there. Okay. And then the tips my favorite tip given to me by my mentor is be born to someone super rich who pays for your film. Yeah. And that takes care of all the areas that you mentioned.
But also, given that documentaries often take a long time, I think the most important thing is make sure that your subject is someone, something you really love and you really want to spend a long time with. You know, don't just do something because it seems like, oh, people care about this, because you have to care about it for a long time.
Thank you.
Having spent so much time with her, do you have any additional thoughts on the uniqueness of her marriage and that distance, so different from what we're used to looking for?
Well, yes. Arnie and Marion had one of the most beautiful relationships that I've ever seen. And you know, when they got together, they were both deep into their careers and they were in their 50s. And they both felt like it worked out very well for them because they each just worked like crazy all week, and then they spent their weekends together. And they both felt like it was a good way for them to live their lives together. And, you know, having spent a lot of time with them, it's, you know, 30-some years together, and they were very much young and in love. So it was always new.
And if the question is, you know, happy marriage tips from Marion and Arnie, I mean, just some things that I would share from what I observed is that they knew they were two different people. They didn't ask to be the same person and to meld completely. They respected each other's difference. They were guided by principles like niceness and politeness and gentility. You know, yes, like other couples, they would have arguments, but they were so mild-mannered and concerned with each other when they did. They were really a pleasure to be around. And they were constantly pushing themselves and the other one to be engaged. And of course, since we met them talking about the brain, engaged on things of science, engaged of ideas. They would write articles even if they couldn't necessarily get them published beyond their own retirement community newsletter. But they constantly had other things happening in their lives, and they weren't content to simply be a consumer of culture. You know, how many of us, myself included, spend too much time watching TV or doing Facebook or whatever we do? They were constantly in the process of project-driven creation and reflecting on the people around them. They practiced enriching their own environment, and I think that that made their relationship real. The distance factor is interesting. Kathy and I, we work together, we live together, we're around each other all the time, and that works for us as a couple. Marion and Arnie, although they did well when they were around each other all the time, they did great for 30 years as a commuter relationship, so everybody can have their own things. I think that's one of the other lessons. All sorts of happy relationships are possible.
Oh, this is just out of curiosity, but the narrator, I know she's an actress, but she has an advanced science degree, and I was just curious, did she show interest in the project because she had a science degree, or did you guys track her down?
This was one of those wonderful serendipitous things that happened. We were trying to think about who should be the narrator of this film, and we didn't know, and we're thinking and we're wondering. And I got a newsletter from UC San Diego, where we had gone to school, and on the cover is a picture of Marion Diamond, and it says, she's a neuroscientist on TV, and she's a neuroscientist in real life. She was the keynote speaker. Well, I'm embarrassed to say I watched so little TV, I didn't even know who she was. But I saw that and ran into Gary and said, oh, look, maybe this should be our narrator. And he said, do you know who she is? No. So we went and listened to her voice, thought she sounds good. And then, lo and behold, a friend of ours from LA had come up to work with us just for a couple of days. And I come bouncing in saying, look, I found our narrator. He says, oh, I know her best friend. And so he sends off an email to her best friend, and within a half an hour, Mayim herself responded and said, I studied with Arnie Scheibel. I will do this. I want to do this. So she basically volunteered. Yeah, yeah.
And she was very critical of how the narration could be better and really helped us in the session. And I had a starstruck moment where she was saying something, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm looking into the eyes of a TV star. What was she saying? You know, and I'm supposed to be Mr. Director guy. I'm like, oh, I better like come back down to earth. And thanks, Mayim, that was very good.
Okay. So, oh,
one more.
Looks like,
what would you say is the film's greatest achievement now that it's been to a few film festivals, received many awards and accolades?
I guess I'm right now pretty impressed with this award that we just got from the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the KALB Science Journalism Award for Best In-Depth Documentary of 2017. Science journalism. Thank you.
And I'll add the very personal thing, just to answer it on another level, and that is that as Marion aged and her memory was not very good, she watched this film repeatedly. She and her husband watched this film, I don't think I'm exaggerating if I say dozens or even 100 times. When Marion watched this film repeatedly as she grew old and couldn't remember her own life, it was such an incredible achievement to offer her her own life back through the film and then see that on her face over the period of the last few years. Beyond her, it makes me think of how many therapeutic uses of the camera there could be for other people dealing with memory loss, but specifically with her as one of the great brain experts, as her own brain became less reliable, that she had something external to remember who she was and what she had done. And what an honor to turn that back to her.
Well, thank you so much. I guess the final question would have to be, what's next? Back to war films, or?
We're really focusing on distributing this film right now because, you know, Marion has passed away, and the Diamond effect, as I hope all of you are feeling it, like, I hope that you have more confidence in your own brains right now from what we've learned. And that seems worthwhile. So we know about television, we know about film festivals, did that. Now we're really working to get it into schools and classrooms. It's why we're selling these DVDs right now, is to raise money for that effort. And we're sharing it with organizations, and there's a Girl Scout troop that has started a Marion Diamond merit badge. There's brain clubs at YMCAs that are starting to use the film. And so it's very rewarding to take someone whose work has always transcended the ivory tower to reach our lives and continue that work. In fact, Kathy insisted we add the epilogue, that her YouTube lectures have this additional 2.6 million people. Like, well, gee, we better keep going on that, because that means there's only 248 million people in the United States who need to be using their brains better. So we'll try to get the film in their hands.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Pete Moss.